Hello, everyone. Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it's Alasdair Gold. I think we'll skip the pleasantries today, and I think we might as well just get straight into what was another crazy defeat at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, 6-3 against Liverpool.
Yeah, well, I'm okay. Thanks for asking. I hope you are too. Oh my goodness, what a game! It was just. I think we kind of probably all feared there was maybe could be one game too far for Spurs this week, and so it proved to be. It was, yeah. I mean, fair. I mean, there's also got to be some credit to Liverpool because we're going to moan about certain things about Spurs definitely, and give reasons for why Spurs weren't going to be at their best yesterday. But you've also got to give some credit to Liverpool, who are, I know this is difficult for you especially, but they are the team at the moment. They're the best team in the Premier League. They're the best team in Europe. I mean, they're top of the Champions League table as well, I think. So, yeah, I mean, going into that game, in any shape or form not being at your best, you're going to get a bit of a, a hammering in certain aspects. Weirdly, the game, Brennan Johnson hits a better shot. It could be ending 6-4 that game, which is a ridiculous scoreline, yes. And that shouldn't be celebrated, that it should be 6-4 in any way. But it's just showing you kind of, even against a team of Liverpool's caliber, Spurs are still creating and scoring goals. Yet, of course, at the other end of the pitch is where the issues currently are lying for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, prior to the Liverpool game, it had been a really good week for Spurs. That 5-0 win against Southampton, followed up by an absolute crazy 4-3 game against Manchester United in the Carabao Cup quarter-finals. Spurs will be coming up against Liverpool again. I dread to think what the
Yay!
score's going to be on aggregate. It might be like 15-12 over two legs. Who knows? But I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Liverpool are by far the best team in the Premier League right now. Probably even world football at the moment, the way they're playing. And, maybe on another day could have scored more than the 6 they did at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the red hot. And I think it was always going to be a case of probably always going to be a game too far for Tottenham after a really, punishing few weeks with only a handful of first team regulars available. And I mean, just starting with the team selection, I was so surprised he went with the same team. I mean, you can understand why he'd gone with it after the midweek win, but then again, you've limited players at the moment. I thought Destiny Doggy would come back in. The Ange spoke about him post-match and said he wasn't quite right today, so that probably explains why Jed Spence got the nod at left back. But I thought Brennan Johnson probably would have come in just to inject some fresh legs into the attack.
Yeah, he's definitely the one. I thought myself that would probably come in. It's one of those though. You look at it and you kind of think, who do you take out at the moment? I don't know that it's more of a fitness thing, but you do look at it and you kind of think, do you take Maddison out and put Kulusevski back? But then obviously Maddison, I don't think was too bad, and obviously scored a really nice goal, which should have got them back in it had Radu Dragic not had a bit of a mad moment before the break. And you don't take Kulusevski out. I think only in hindsight, looking at it, perhaps Sonny. Sonny didn't have the greatest of games, but then also, if I'm Postecoglou and I've got a big game against Liverpool, you probably want your captain and one of your most experienced players in that team who's played in these big games in the past and scored against Liverpool. So I kind of got it. I don't know if playing Johnson would have fixed the issues within the game. The only one maybe is that I did feel that Kulusevski was knackered at points and didn't track back a lot and left Porro with a lot of overloads to deal with. And perhaps Johnson being fresher maybe could have defended a little bit better and helped him in that respect and track back. But yeah, I mean, it shows you the limitations in the squad right now when we're talking about he could have made one change. It's mad, isn't it? It's absolutely mad.
It is, but thankfully for the Boxing Day game, there's Rodrigo Bentancur now to come back into it, and I think he's got to change it. Boxing Day, quick turnaround again with Wolves coming up 3 days after. But yeah, I mean, I was driving back from Liverpool yesterday, so I was listening to it on the radio. I thought Liverpool had actually scored a lot quicker in the game. I watched some of it back early, and it was about 22, 23 minutes in, and what a goal that was. Not a good one to concede from a Spurs perspective, but that ball in from Trent Alexander-Arnold just, bang on the money, and a fantastic header from Luis Diaz. I think just looking back at it, it's like Diaz goes into this space between Dragusin and Porro. I think Dragusin's actually looking at Szoboszlai, and it's Diaz who comes off the back of Sarr. And again, Spurs have always just seemed to get punished in that same position.
I was about to say that. Times. Is that the problem, though? We're always talking about someone getting in between Porro and the right-sided defender. Always.
Yeah. Well, how many times this season now?
Yeah.
So many.
But that's on Ange. That is something, definitely there's going to be a lot of things in this we're going to talk about that maybe Postecoglou is having to deal with. We just kind of mentioned one there in terms of the lack of ability to make changes. But if you are conceding a very similar goal from a very similar position, a lot of times, you've got to fix that. There's got to be a way of getting around that. He may point to the personnel he's able to call upon, but that goal is being conceded when they had the 4 players he wanted in that defence.
Oh, 100%. It's happened so many times, once you can maybe understand, twice maybe, but it's a number of games. Leicester, West Ham at home. I mean, there's so many, really. Yeah. And it's something Spurs do need to fix. Hopefully, they'll have that first choice backline back very soon in the new year. We'll just need to wait and see when Romero and Van der Ven come back. But, Spurs can score countless goals. We've seen that over the past week. But they've got to fix things at the back just to make things easier for themselves.
Yeah. Well, this is the crazy thing, isn't it? It's, I mean, a lot of it is on the personnel. I don't think you can get away from that whatsoever in certain aspects. I mean, you look at the players there. You're playing against the Liverpool kind of attacking lineup that is one of the most experienced out there. It's got a lot of players that kind of are used to playing alongside each other, and they're coming up against, I mean, you look at it, you've got, I know everyone should be well aware of this, but it does have to be, it's almost like it got lost from a fair bit of the analysis yesterday, I felt, after the game. That back 5, let's call it, with the goalkeeper, you've got an 18-year-old midfielder playing in central defence against the likes of Salah. You've got a right back playing at left back in only his second Premier League start in his entire career. You've got a 22-year-old centre-back who is meant to be the leading figure in the back line. You've got a right back who, let's be honest, he's running on empty right now. He's played more minutes than any other player in the team. And then behind them, you've got a goalkeeper making his 5th Premier League appearance in 18 months. It's like there's got to be an element of taking that into account. You're going to concede chances against someone like Liverpool. You just are with a back 4 like that. It is ramshackle, thrown together. And that's no disservice to the players who put in as much as they could. And certainly I felt, we're probably going to talk about them with Gray and Spence, I thought they probably came out in the game with credit. Madly, in a game where a defence has conceded 6 goals, I actually thought the 2 of them on the whole did pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I don't kind of know in a way what people are expecting from a back 4 like that it's just going to be an absolute perfect backs to the wall job, even at the best of times. I think they're going to struggle against a side like Liverpool will open up a team like that. But yeah, it is very frustrating. And I think there's been a couple of games in recent weeks at home, and that'll be Chelsea United and this game, where too many goals have been conceded, and it's really kind of skewed the way the amount of goals that have been conceded look. It was only a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the fact that only 2-3 teams have conceded fewer than Spurs this season, and and we've mentioned already that this is the first time they've lost by more than a goal this season in a game. Yet you have results like that where you're conceding a lot of goals, and it just throws everything towards the narrative of Spurs are awful in defence. And I saw some stats yesterday, which, to be fair, do bear out some of that stuff recently with I think it's in December, and they're like bottom in a lot of the stats for shots conceded and shots faced and things like that. And yeah, there's definitely an element that I'm kind of wary. There's one part of me that wants to say, yes, they have to clearly work on some aspects of defensive coaching that isn't going as well as it could. But on the other hand, can Postecoglou really slam these players and criticize them when he's squeezing everything he can out of them pretty much to go again 2.5 days later each time? It's such a difficult balance.
It is. Going to the second goal they conceded, again, that's two players going for the ball, bouncing off Szoboszlai, and then McAllister, who made a really good run into the box, timed it to perfection. I don't know, can Fraser Forster do better in that scenario in terms of maybe coming off his line? But yeah, 2-0 down against Liverpool does give you a bit of a mountain to climb.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there's various aspects of that. There's not reacting to the ball when it loops up in the air. I mean, I think Spence and Gray collide going for the same header, and in my talking points this morning, probably put a chunk of that towards Forster. He's quite slow to react to it and come out. If he comes out there and gets a punch to that, McAllister's got no chance. But he kind of he does do, or tries to do that eventually. He kind of does one of those weird, you remember Schmeichel, kind of like the star jump things they come out and do? And you kind of think, if you just reacted a bit quicker and came out and tried to punch that, it's not even a goal we're talking about. And two headers within the space of not too long, and it just sets the whole momentum for the game in a different direction. Although there was a chance to turn that around in that half still.
Yeah, very much so. Spurs obviously getting back into the game. James Maddison, really well taken finish that as with Kulusevski winning the ball off McAllister, edge of the area, and then Maddison just firing the ball between those two Liverpool players, I think Van Dijk and Robertson. But the worst thing you can do after getting yourself back into it is literally conceding moments later, and that's what Spurs did on the cusp of half-time in stoppage time. And again, such maybe an avoidable one to concede, and it's just Radu Dragsin running out of position to try and win the ball. But if you're travelling that distance towards the halfway line, you've got to win the ball, because if you don't, there's just a gaping hole at the back. And Liverpool took full advantage. Salah slipping in Szoboszlai. I think he had options to his left as well, and just finished between Forster's legs.
Yeah, and that's it. I've seen some kind of photos doing the rounds or a screenshot of what that attack looked like afterwards, and it's slightly unfair, really, because it showed, like, I think it was Porro and Gray, I think, racing back to try and deal with the 2 or 3 Liverpool players coming at them. But the issue with that is, exactly as you say, that's caused by the missed header. It's like, that didn't need to happen. He didn't need to step out and try and win that header. That's where a non-22-year-old, let's say, an older, experienced head, even Ben Davies, and I know that's, I'm not meaning to be like dismissive, even Ben Davies, but Ben Davies is not the first choice kind of centre-backs. But Ben Davies, in his 30s, is thinking, maybe even pace-wise, I'm not going to try and go for that. I'm going to, if he's going to leap for that, let him go for it, and I'll collect the second ball. And Dragoshin kind of tries to be aggressive and positive, which, again, I guess is something that's encouraged at Spurs. However, yeah, if you're going to go out there and do that and lose it, it just causes so many issues behind. And, you know, it's a nice sweeping kind of 1-2 move between him and Salah, and then maybe argue Forster came out a bit slow for that one as well, potentially as well. But it's just such a killer psychological goal, because to have Maddison hit a really nice goal back, a lovely curling finish, and then you think, okay, even if you just get to midfield with that now, that's it. That's what you build on. And it is just such a cliche, but it is such a psychological punch in the gut. Can you have a psychological punch in the gut? I don't know. But it pretty much just knocked them. And in the second half, they come out and concede twice more. And the whole tone of the game was set, I feel, in conceding that goal before the break.
Oh yeah, it completely changes things because if you go in 1 goal down at the break, you fancy your chances of getting back into it. But
Yeah.
to concede, seconds before the halftime whistle, that just changes the team talk again, and you're just back to square one. And what doesn't help is then you concede in 9 minutes after the restart.
Yeah.
That gives you an even bigger mountain to climb, even though Spurs do have goals in the game. And they're always going to create chances and can take them. I mean, this one was just so unlucky. It was good defending from Archie Gray in terms of clearing the ball off the line twice. And then he just lands to the feet of Salah, who puts it in from a matter of yards out.
Was that? I'm trying to remember now. There's so many goals in the game that I'm trying to remember which one. Which was it, the fourth or the fifth one that came from Kulusevski not passing to Porro high up the pitch, and that allowed Porro to be caught up the pitch, and there was a massive gaping hole behind him that they ran into, Liverpool.
That might have been the fifth one. I'm
Might
not
have been
sure,
the
to
fifth
be
one.
honest.
Maybe I've got the wrong one. I think I put fourth in my talking points, and the way you've described it now, I'm thinking maybe it was actually the fifth. Yeah. That it was an unfortunate goal, but unfortunately, when it's the fourth, you can't really moan too much about a lack of fortune.
No, not at all. It's just the way it's going, really, for Spurs at the moment. Sometimes in some games when luck's on your side, Gray's clearance falls to a teammate and they managed to get it clear, but everything was just really falling for Liverpool and going against Spurs. And it's just a really, really bad period for the team at the moment. The injuries, it's just like everything's against them, the world's against them, and it's just about trying to get through it as best they can. And like we said at the start of the podcast, probably was just a game too far for them after a really, really busy week, a challenging week. But yeah, it's like you said, just the world's against them, really.
Well, if they just, I mean, if we could just scrub this fixture from the schedule, let them get to Christmas, let them have a little break. But even the break doesn't come till pre-Newcastle, is it? When they got 6 days. That's the first time they're actually getting any sustained amount of time to rest their limbs. It's just madness at the moment as well. And thankfully, there's a few players on the way back. But my goodness, yeah, as you say, right now it's. They have a week where they get back-to-back wins, and you kind of think, okay, fair play. You kind of ground them out. You've got there, regardless of how they got there in the end against United after the couple of Forster messes kind of turned it a bit. But yeah, they got through it, and then it was the worst opponent they could have faced. It's like, oh, you've had a tiring week. Okay, here's Liverpool. Here's a team that have not only had an extra day to recover, but were able to make loads of changes for their Carabao Cup game against Southampton. We're going to come at you fresh, full of belief, full of absolute attacking verve and confidence of being top in the league, top in the Champions League. And yeah, good luck. And it was kind of what we expected. And I think, to be honest, we kind of expected there was going to be an outcry after it as well, even though you could kind of see what game was probably going to come. But yeah, my issue with it mainly is I kind of agree with Postecoglou got a little bit tetchy after the game with certain questions, and pretty much all of them were to do with the amount of goals conceded and taking nothing into account about the missing players. And he was funny. I think it was BBC on both occasions. Once in their TV interview, I think it was, that probably would have gone out with Match of the Day too, and also in the press conference as well. And yeah, I get it because he's frustrated as anyone right now. He's having to work with what he's got, whether that is him not pushing enough for a bigger squad in the summer, or whether that is the powers that be above him not giving him a strong enough squad to work with and more ready-made experienced players. I don't know, but it is you can see it starting to wind him up a bit, the repetitive questions. I mean, you and I have both been in plenty of his press conferences, and we hear the things he's asked that are carbon copies of a question you heard in the last press conference. So yeah, I get it. But hey, if you're going to give any credit in that second half, the Spurs started to find a way back, and then the stadium got lifted. And to be fair, the fans were singing his name, even when there were, I think, 5 5-2 down, 5-1 maybe even, which shows that certainly the fans inside the stadium were and do believe that there's something there. They're trying to get somewhere. It's just they're having their kind of legs cut off at the knees right now, and you can't run when that happens. Well, I guess you can if you have a. I don't know what area I'm getting into now, but yes, there are people that run without the lower parts of their legs. I don't know where I was going with that.
Right. Well, I think we'll quickly move away from that, and I think it's time to speak about NordVPN, our great sponsors. Ali, do you want to let everyone know about the benefits of using Nord?
Absolutely. I think I need a holiday now rather than going into the area of artificial limb attachments and things like that. I don't know where that was going. Yes. I would love to, and I'm sure many of the Spurs players right now would love to head away and jet off somewhere for a nice week of relaxation and recovery for their aching muscles. And if they were to do so, they could certainly use NordVPN on their travels. Because it is something that's helped me so many times, whether it's through work or holiday, getting abroad and being able to access everything I normally would at home, all the various streaming services if need be, and various applications by switching my phone to thinking it's in the UK using NordVPN. And likewise, when I'm in the UK, I can use NordVPN to make my phone think it's in various other countries, so that I can pretty much access whatever I want around the world. And it means you can kind of subscribe to certain things that might only work in other countries. You can do plenty of things. You can book tickets for various events, flights, trains, whatever you want, and you might get a better price if your phone or device believes it's in that country you're booking it from. Or booking it to take place in. And on top of all of that, you should be aware by now, but if you're not, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. And on top of all of that, if that wasn't enough, if you're a Gold Guest Talk Tottenham listener, you can get the best discount off your NordVPN plan by going to nordvpn.com/goldguest, and our link will give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's absolutely no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And in case you missed that URL, the link is also in the podcast episode description box.
Right, let's get back to the game. And as you said, Spurs got themselves back into it, even though they're 5-1 down. They continue to play Ange's way, as he always used to say at Celtic. We never stop, and they did cause some issues for Liverpool late on. Kulusevski getting the goal back, really well taken finish. Good play from Dom Solanke to put the ball through to him. Solanke then getting the goal for himself. That he's proved over the past week. If you create the chances for him, he can take them. Scored 2 against United from 2 shots. This was a really well finished goal as well. Good header from Brennan Johnson over Van Dijk, and Solanke on the stretch with his left foot pointing to the bottom corner of the net. And then Brennan Johnson, after what was a really, really well worked Spurs move to create the chance, Alisson saving low down. If that had gone in, what a finish to the game it could have been.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think, was that after their 6th goal, wasn't it? So it would have ended up, I think, being 6-4 at that point. I think. Honestly, it all blurred into one because it was just such a crazy game. But yeah, I mean, how many teams this season have scored 3 or 4 against Liverpool? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Have they conceded that many against anyone? Have they even conceded 3 to anyone?
I don't know. I mean, I think they've only lost once in the league this season. That was against Forest, and that was 1-0 at Anfield in late August, early September. But yeah, even in Champions League and that, they're running away in games and beating, some good opposition. So yeah, to score 3 against Liverpool shows how impressive Spurs can be going forward. But then when you concede in 6, it tells a different side of the story.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to concede 6 at home. Absolutely. There's no getting away from that, as much as we can kind of praise what they did at the front. And yeah, I mean, Decky's goal was beautiful. It's such a lovely goal. And the cleverness of the little chip from Solanke's brilliant, and Solanke's goal himself. was no mug he was turning in the box to do that. That was Virgil van Dijk. It's a really good turn and finish as well. And his stats, they're racking up now. 15 goal involvements in 23 games for Spurs, despite what we've constantly said that they don't create enough for him. That's just crazy. 4 goals and 2 assists in December for him. And Deck himself, Kulusevski, I mean, he's got 14 goal involvements in 26 games. That shows that he's kind of now improving that output as well. There's some quotes actually just came out before we started this pod today from Kulusevski that must have been in the mix zone, essentially kind of talking about the fact that he felt the players have to make better decisions in games. When they're kind of in this tired state, that they have to deal with situations better. And whether that is occasionally, I suppose, just being slightly less gung-ho in certain decisions they make. Because there's a difference. This is the thing. There's this kind of idea, I think, that Postecoglou football is only one way. It's like this one beat, this monotone thing of just fly forward, everyone, go, 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 go. And it's not really what it is. It is about making the right decisions in moments. And we talk about Kulusevski is a great example there. When you've got Porro's committed himself on the right-hand side, get him the ball. You've got to get him the ball. And if you don't, then the entire team and the whole system is then compromised because of the space behind him. And I think that's what he means, little moments like that where they've got to do better. It'd be interesting to see how it's taken. I think some people will take it as in like Postecoglou needs to compromise sometimes. I don't think, from what I can tell, that was the intention. I think the intention is more that the players need to make the better decisions in matches as well. It may well be that, from the outside looking in, that Postecoglou at times, yes, has to make some compromise. I don't want to use a compromise word because he goes absolutely mad when you use that. It's not something to be fearful of, but it is a very often repeated word. And I don't think it's a compromise thing. I think it is just there are certain moments when they can kind of tweak the way they do stuff. And yeah, it's a funny thing right now because I do agree with a lot of what he's saying. And as a Tottenham fan for far too many decades, I know that a Tottenham team that sits back and hopes to get a result is a Tottenham team that very rarely achieves that. There's this kind of, it was only, I mean, you and I on this pod probably only, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years ago, probably were bemoaning the fact that once again, in each game, we were talking about Spurs getting a goal, and then just weirdly starting retreat back down the pitch, getting them in a situation where even though they've got players like Kane and Son and all of that up there, they're kind of naturally sitting back, inviting pressure and conceding, whether it was late on or whatever. And that was something that I remember week after week us kind of going on about. And now it's almost like there's this slight change in attitude that, I know Postecoglou is making sure they don't do that, but I want him to do that again. Do that again sometimes. It's like, but Spurs are rubbish at it. They're terrible at it. They're awful at kind of sitting back and hoping. It just doesn't work. So I kind of like the fact that they're now what people were calling for before, which is a team that tries to show no mercy and things like that, and just never does give up and just keep the score down, I suppose, is what you would have looked at it yesterday and seen like they tried to still try and win the game rather than just saying, oh, we'll take the 4-1 or 5-1 or whatever, or I don't know. But look, there's certain ways that Postecoglou, I'm sure, will look to adapt and change certain aspects without changing the entire philosophy that he's trying to do. Because the moment you start changing things, you essentially pass on the message to those players that, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. If you want to feel safe and revert to type and sit back, that's okay. And that's the worst possible thing he can do right now. It's the same with any major rebuild. Essentially, if you do a mixed message version of it, that rebuild doesn't happen. And that's exactly what he's trying to do with the players as well.
Yeah. So Spurs on the end of a 6-3 defeat, conceding 6 at home against Liverpool, fans could quite easily turn. But from what you were saying, being inside the stadium, it seemed like there was still an awful lot of support for Ange yesterday. And this was on a day when there was a peaceful protest against ENIC taking place outside the stadium before the game. Balloons released, I think it was in the 24th minute of the game as well. You just want to give everyone a bit of an insight into the atmosphere yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the protest took place ahead of the game. I think it started from about 3 o'clock onwards. Differing views on the numbers involved, but let's say a vocal number of fans is probably the best way to say it. And I do think it increased in number over the kind of the time before people would then go into the stadium. And it was certainly it was heard and it was there, and that's the key thing to kind of any protest. The balloon thing, I've got to be 100% honest. I didn't even know it happened. It was a few journalists were kind of saying, "Oh, 24th minute, did it happen? Did it happen?" It may be that we're just more focused on the pitch, but I think certainly one or two journalists noticed a couple of balloons kind of that had floated about. So it did happen. And yeah, the thing about the protest in particular, and it kind of it just shows how tone deaf the club can be at times, and just an inability to read the room. Is that you've got a game where there's this protest, which is mainly about Daniel Levy, the club, the hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, being more focused on Spurs being a business than a football club. And on the same day, you've got that protest going on. There's Squid Game stuff going on at the stadium where you've got these random people dotted around, standing or sitting behind us. They're in like some boxes behind the press box, wearing the guards' outfits from Squid Games. And there's a pre-match montage of Spurs versus Liverpool, and it was all set to Squid Games music and all this sort of stuff. And I guess even by talking about it now, we're getting the publicity to the deal and stuff like that. Yet you couldn't get a more obvious version of something that was about business, that was daft from a football perspective, happening at a game where there's been a protest about the club being run more as a business than a football club. And, it's little things like this. You just kind of think, no, just no. It's like last month when they made the huge announcement that they were releasing a new font. It's like, come on, who cares? Keep that sort of stuff in house. Just change it. And look, I know the argument could be made that they will have made money out of this deal with Netflix or the producer Squid Games, whoever the deal was with, probably Netflix, you'd imagine. And that money then potentially maybe goes into signing someone in January to reinforce the team. And if that's the case, great. But it's just this thing about reading the room. And I think there's a Daniel Levy interview coming out quite soon. I think he's done one with Simon Jordan, the former Palace chairman. And I'm intrigued to see how that reads the room or not. Because, with Daniel Levy, he often in these interviews, when he very rarely does them, they're kind of double down on the things he believes in and says. And I'm not sure that's going to be what people are going to want to hear right now. But we'll see. We'll see. We can't kind of judge it before it's even come out. But yeah, it's either going to be a PR nightmare for Spurs, or it might, I don't know, it might help them. But at least it's communication. That's what we always call for, and at least that's happening in some form. But yeah, sorry, also with Ange, singing his name, good 3, 4, 5 times, and I mean the bulk of the crowd as well. It's a game where that South Stand was quite loudly singing a fair few times the Kulusevski Levy chant, which is going to become a very popular chant now. Just mainly, I think, because of the catchiness of it as well. It is one that kind of, I think, will just become a chant that's used. But to have that against the club while supporting the manager is quite fascinating, really, in one aspect, because we don't have that a lot. When in the past, when we get to this scenario where the Levy out chants and stuff like that, it's often the manager is kind of seen as part of the problem as well. There's a suggestion of an overarching problem, but when it comes to the manager, it's almost like, well, yeah, I'd like to change them as well. And certainly in terms of the fans inside the stadium, that doesn't feel like the case right now. And I was talking to a couple of journalists after the game about it, and I don't know if you agree with this or not. We were trying to work out what's the difference, because his predecessors, the last 3, have all been sacked with Spurs in a better position in the table than they are right now. Even Nuno, I think Spurs were 8th at that point. And you kind of look at it, and I think Jose was 7th and Conte fourth, I think, if I remember correctly. I know the fourth was a little bit of a false position because they'd played extra games and things like that. But yeah, obviously Spurs are in 11th. And we're kind of saying, like, it's fascinating. Why is he getting this extra support? And the kind of idea we came around to was that perhaps because he's got this clear vision, because he knows what he wants to do with Spurs, and maybe there's an understanding within the stadium of the amount of kind of injuries he's got and the kind of players he's having to play week in, week out, and they're seeing that, and they're seeing the tiredness sometimes in the players. Whereas maybe when you had the likes of, let's say, Mourinho, Conte, I suppose you could say Mourinho, Conte, and Nuno, but especially Mourinho and Conte, they were brought in to be these kind of guys that got you the results regardless of how you got there. That's the thing. It's about winning the game. Doesn't matter what kind of football you play, doesn't matter anything else. You get that result. So when the results weren't there, there's nothing else to really cling to. Whereas with Postecoglou, there's an overarching philosophy, an idea, a style of football, and you can see that even in the defeats that they're trying to play that way. So perhaps that gives fans something more to grab onto and a vision of what's to come rather than just what they're seeing now. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, there's a lot to take in there from what you said.
Sorry,
No, I totally agree. I think you can see a clear style. Spurs are playing the football the fans, been wanting for years. We've seen how good it can be, but we've also seen how bad it can be. At times, it's just like with Spurs, there's no middle ground. Like,
no,
decent
they don't do
defensively, good
normal.
going forward.
Yeah.
But I think as well, there's quite clearly an understanding from the fans of the current plight with the amount of injuries and, needing to add to the squad, a bit more experience in there. But let's be honest, if you go back to August and you were offered halfway stage of the season, you'd be 4 points behind Man City, you'd have taken it. But no one would have had Man City down in seventh, would they?
No, definitely not.
With Forest and Bournemouth ahead of them. But Spurs are in 11th, not a good position, like you said, compared to where Nuno was, where Jose and Antonio Conte was. But I think still 5 points off fifth. So you can see what Spurs can do in an attacking sense. The Premier League's top scorers. And to be 11th with an absolute crazy goal difference, it's about 14, plus 14 now.
Mad.
It's just about marrying things up, really. If they can still be so potent in the final third and then shore things up at the back when everyone's fit and available, you can see where they can get to. But again, it's just getting that consistency into the team, and fingers crossed that'll be the case in 2025. But at least Spurs are in the semi-finals of the Cup. I think that's always going to give the manager credit. They're in a decent position in the Europa League to go through by the top 8. Got the FA Cup coming up, and they can certainly move higher in the Premier League. So, yeah, fingers crossed there'll be smoother waters over the coming months.
Yeah, if they can get through these next probably 3 games that are coming up, I would say, and don't lose any of those, at least get maybe 2 wins and a draw. I think that just pushes you through that. And then suddenly it becomes a little period where, with the 2 wins before this one, there's a nice little kind of an upturn there. But again, it's tired players, and it's meeting Nuno and his team, who are in really good form and going fantastically. They've just got to push through this, and whether Spurs and the fans can continue to show patience is something that hasn't always been the case over the years. So I hope they do, because I kind of feel like Postecoglou deserves to get through this period and Spurs actually stick to something, because it's so harsh to judge him right now. Even those fans who are calling for his head, I kind of don't see many great suggestions of who should replace him. Because let's be honest, you could have taken Arne Slot from the other dugout and put him in the Spurs dugout. He's still dealing with all the same problems. Unless you're picking an amazing miracle healer as your manager, so it's doctor, because it's probably what it needs to be. Nothing changes. You're still using the same tired players every 3 days. I just fingers crossed that that he can kind of turn this around. They start moving up the table, and he's given a little bit of patience in what they're doing, because Spurs have been in this cycle too long. They need to break it somehow.
Yeah, definitely. Right, we'll leave that there for today's latest episode of Golden Guest Talk Tottenham. I think it'll be next year when we return. So, yeah, I don't think we'll have
Maybe.
time next week. If we do, we return. If not, I hope everyone has a happy Christmas and a happy New Year. In the meantime, just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/gold guest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.